What if everything we thought we knew about the origin of humanity is completely off? What if the whole story we've been told about Adam and Eve and the creation of man is just a tiny piece of a much bigger and maybe even forbidden truth? Get ready, because what you're about to hear might totally change how you see the world, faith, science, and the history of our existence. The truth about the Anunnaki has been hidden for thousands of years, silenced by religions, governments, and institutions that don't want you to find out who we really are, or where we actually come from. Imagine for a second that these beings from the stars, worshipped as gods by the ancient Sumerians, were actually the ones who created humanity. These mysterious figures, called the Anunnaki, didn't just walk the earth thousands of years ago. They might have genetically modified the creatures already here to create what we now call humankind. Today, you're ready to face this idea. The ancient Mesopotamian records, the ones from the world's first civilizations, contain stories that modern science tries to dismiss or write off as myths. But what if those myths are more than just stories? What if they're telling us about something that really happened? Something so incredible it would overturn everything we've learned from textbooks. Why are these stories embedded in ancient scriptures like the Bible and other sacred texts? Is it just a coincidence, or proof that a hidden truth has been kept from us for centuries? The Anunnaki are described as gods who came down from the heavens, bringing knowledge far beyond their time, using technology that seemed impossible back then, and holding power over the creation of life. Why do so many cultures, spread across continents and oceans, have similar legends about star gods? Why do almost all of these accounts talk about a time when these beings taught humans how to farm, build, and unlock the mysteries of the universe? In this video, we'll explore the hidden truths that conventional books won't tell you. We'll dive into the Sumerian clay tablets that describe the Anunnaki in chilling detail. We'll dig into forbidden theories about how these beings might have altered our DNA, turning a primitive species into something very much like us today. Whether it was an alien experiment or part of a deeper, mysterious spiritual connection between us and them. Many scholars, archaeologists, and independent researchers have spent their lives trying to figure this out, but they face resistance, censorship, and even ridicule. Why is there so much effort to dismiss these findings? Maybe because these truths could shake entire systems of belief and power. Maybe because admitting the Anunnaki shaped our history means admitting we're not really in control of our own destiny like we've always believed. Have you ever noticed how some biblical passages feel mysterious, like they hint at something way beyond our imagination? What if the Anunnaki are the sons of God, or the watchers mentioned in sacred texts? What if Genesis is just a simplified version of a much more complex story? Every answer just leads to more questions, and that's exactly what we're going to explore together. Get ready for a journey that blurs the line between myth and reality, science and spirituality, history and conspiracy. We're going to uncover secrets buried for thousands of years, each detail a piece of a bigger puzzle connecting our past to our future. But be warned, once you open your mind to this, you'll never see the world the same way again. Are you ready to discover what no one else has dared to reveal? ChatGPT once said, "If you've made it this far, it's because you feel there's something bigger behind everything we've been told." This is a curious mental journey for those who refuse to accept easy answers and want to dig deeper. That's why I want to hear from you. What do you think about the Anunnaki? Do you believe they could be the true creators of humanity? Or is this just a theory? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective could open new paths for this investigation. Every comment and reflection helps build a community of truth seekers, people like you who aren't afraid to question what's hidden. So drop your thoughts below, and let's solve these mysteries together. If this video made you think differently, if it gave you answers or sparked new questions, let me know now. When you like the video, YouTube knows it's important and will help share this message with more people who need to hear this forbidden truth. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell because this is just the beginning. There are many more revelations coming and you won't want to miss a single one. This is just the start of our journey to uncover humanity's most hidden secrets. Since the dawn of civilization, humans have searched for the deepest answer of all. Where do we come from? In ancient Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, a mysterious civilization thrived, leaving behind fascinating records about our possible real creators, the Anunnaki. To the Sumerians, these beings weren't just myths or symbols. They were real gods who came from the sky and interacted directly with humans. On clay tablets that have survived thousands of years, we find detailed accounts of these powerful entities who, according to the records, arrived in shining vessels, carrying knowledge so advanced it still seems unbelievable for a civilization 6,000 years ago. The name Anunnaki roughly means those who came down from the earth. They're described as imposing, maybe even giant, beings with superhuman powers and the ability to create and alter life. Many Sumerian stories focus on Enki and Enlil, two key figures among the Anunnaki, who played major roles in shaping and controlling the human race. The big question is, were these so-called gods actually an advanced alien race who, after arriving on Earth, decided to mold humanity to serve their own purposes? When you line up these ancient records alongside biblical texts, the similarities are striking. Genesis talks about God forming man from the dust of the earth. But what if that dust isn't just a metaphor? What if the creation involved something way more literal, like genetic engineering? In Genesis 1:26 it says, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." Who's this us? Why does the Bible, a text that's supposed to honor a single God, use the plural? It might be a hint that the ancient writers were talking about a council of higher beings, maybe even those same Anunnaki the Sumerians worshipped. These questions unsettle us because they challenge the foundation of belief and authority. To accept that the Anunnaki were actually here, guiding human creation, means admitting that the story of mankind we've been told is incomplete, or maybe even purposely twisted. And that idea feels dangerous. That's why this topic is labeled forbidden, not because it's impossible, but because if it's true, it would blow apart the official stories upheld by religions and institutions for thousands of years. The controversy only grows when you look at other ancient cultures. The Egyptians talked about gods from the stars. So did the Maya, and even some African tribes tell stories of celestial beings coming down to Earth. Is that just a coincidence? Or did these widely separated civilizations witness the same events at different times? Why do their legends always describe human-like beings with powers beyond anything we can imagine? Some believe that great ancient achievements, like the pyramids in Egypt or the statues of Mesopotamia, prove Anunnaki influence. After all, how else could so-called primitive societies build monuments perfectly aligned with stars and planets without some advanced knowledge? Why are so many of these structures oriented toward the sky? It's almost like these civilizations were sending a message. We came from the heavens. Mainstream science dismisses these ideas as fantasies or misunderstandings of history. Yet more and more independent researchers and scholars have revisited the Sumerian texts and found details that don't add up with conventional thinking. There are passages describing the formation of Earth, the solar system, and even the origin of species with a precision that would have been impossible for a civilization so ancient without advanced knowledge. And here's the question we can't ignore. Why would anyone be so afraid of this truth? What if tomorrow we had proof that the Anunnaki really existed and were behind our origins? How would that shake up faith, science, politics, and society as a whole? Maybe that's why this topic remains off limits. If you're still with me, you're probably feeling a mix of curiosity and awe. Think about this. What if none of this is just myth? I want to hear what you think, but I'll let you save that for later. We've got a lot more mind-blowing stuff coming. You might have heard bits and pieces of these stories before, but trust me, we're going to dig into details most people don't know. As you think it over, ask yourself, have you ever imagined that the gods of ancient times might have been real flesh and blood beings with technology powerful enough to create life and shape worlds? Could everything we know about human evolution have been guided by a hidden hand? Keep that thought. It's just the beginning. If you believe there's something they don't want us to find out, drop the word mystery in the comments below. We're going deeper next, with revelations that will challenge not only official history, but everything you thought was true. Until now, the Sumerian civilization still puzzles many scholars, as much as the mysteries surrounding human creation itself. Imagine a people who, over 6,000 years ago, appeared out of nowhere already mastering writing, astronomy, math, farming, and complex laws. The Sumerians, who settled in what's now Iraq, built one of the most remarkable cultures in human history. What's even more fascinating is that they claim they didn't invent their own knowledge. They said it was all taught by beings from somewhere else, beings they called the Anunnaki. The earliest mentions of the Anunnaki come from clay tablets written in cuneiform, the oldest known writing system. These writings don't read like simple myths or symbols. The Sumerians described, in almost chilling detail, beings who came down from the sky in shining craft, looking human but with intelligence and power beyond anything else. They were seen as gods, but not spiritual or ghostly figures. They were real, physical beings who walked among humans, shared techniques, set laws, and guided the first civilizations. The Sumerians believed these beings came from a planet called Nibiru, a distant world in our solar system that takes thousands of years to orbit the sun. This is where the ancient astronaut theory starts to gain traction. Researchers like Zecharia Sitchin saw these records as possible proof of ancient alien visits. According to these ideas, the Anunnaki came to Earth looking for resources, maybe gold, to power their technology. Along the way, they supposedly got involved in human development, possibly genetically engineering local creatures to create a race that could serve their goals. But think about this. How could such an ancient civilization describe such advanced concepts? How did they know about planets, stars, orbits, and technology without modern tools? Many believe it's because they actually encountered these gods firsthand. They weren't just imagining or making up stories, they were recording what they saw. When we look at Sumerian images of the Anunnaki, we see tall, powerful figures, sometimes with wings or holding objects that look like advanced tools. Some of these pictures are so detailed they still can't be fully explained. The Sumerians also showed advanced knowledge of astronomy, recognizing all the planets in our solar system, including some only discovered by modern science in recent decades. How could they have known this? It makes us wonder if the Anunnaki were really visitors from another world. The similarities between these records and those from other ancient cultures are just as interesting. Many civilizations, from the Egyptians to the Maya, also talked about gods from the stars who shared knowledge. It's almost like an invisible thread connects these cultures, as if they all had contact with the same beings at different times. This repeated pattern can't just be a coincidence. It points to something much bigger, something that's been hidden for ages. Ancient astronaut theorists argue that our origins are deeply tied to these encounters. To them, the Anunnaki didn't just influence society, They shaped what it means to be human. The idea of genetic manipulation is powerful and even a little scary, but it fits when you look at how suddenly humans seem to have evolved. How did we go from basic hunter-gatherers to city builders, masters of writing and engineering so quickly? It's almost like something sped up our evolution. Of course, talking about this makes a lot of people uncomfortable. It challenges mainstream science, religious beliefs, and even our identity as a species. Still, when you study the Sumerian records, you can't ignore the details. When they talk about Enki, the god who shaped humanity, or Enlil, the strict ruler, they don't sound like fairy tales. They seem to be describing real encounters with superior beings. Think about how many biblical stories and legends from other cultures might actually be interpretations of these meetings with the Anunnaki. Looking at it this way, the Genesis story of creating man in God's image takes on a new meaning. Maybe these gods were just a more advanced race whose appearance was similar to ours, because we were literally made after them. Now I want to ask you, have you ever wondered if the history you were taught is just a controlled version of the truth? Maybe deep down you felt like something doesn't quite add up, like parts have been deliberately left out. If that sounds like you, drop the word mystery in the comments below. I want to see who's ready to look beyond what they've been told. In the next part, we'll keep going, decoding symbols, stories, and evidence that suggests the Sumerians were the direct inheritors of knowledge from these ancient astronauts. And I promise, the more you listen, the more you'll realize these stories aren't as far-fetched as they sound. They hold a deep truth that could change everything you think you know about where we come from. The ancient Sumerian texts go way beyond simple tales about gods and kings. On some clay tablets, we find descriptions of human creation so detailed it makes us question whether we really evolved naturally, or if there was a deliberate intervention by advanced beings. Picture this. An Anunnaki arriving from the stars comes to Earth searching for resources and sees the need for workers to do the hard labor. According to the records, they found primitive creatures, early humans, and decided to improve them. But how? This is where the idea of genetic engineering comes in. The Sumerians described these gods mixing their own blood, or DNA, with that of early humans to create a hybrid race. This might sound like a metaphor, but it closely resembles the genetic manipulation we do today. In the 21st century, we can edit genes, clone animals, and create new organisms in labs. So why is it so hard to believe that a far more advanced race could have done this thousands of years ago? The idea that we're the product of intentional intervention is not only fascinating, but also helps explain certain jumps in human evolution that traditional science struggles with. If we look at the biblical story of Adam and Eve, there are some interesting parallels. The Bible says God formed man from the dust of the earth and breathed life into his nostrils. That might be symbolic, but it could also be a simplified way of describing a complex technological process. When Genesis says that woman was created from Adam's rib, could that actually be, in simple terms, a reference to genetic manipulation or cloning? If you think about it more broadly, the Bible might be giving us a brief coded version of what the Sumerians explained in much more detail. Zecharia Sitchin, one of the leading scholars on these ancient texts, dedicated his life to translating and interpreting these stories. To him, there's no doubt the Anunnaki were real and played a direct role in creating humanity. Sitchin pointed out that the Sumerian tablets contain astronomical knowledge that we only confirmed thousands of years later. He also suggested that Nibiru, the Anunnaki's home planet, follows an elliptical orbit of about 3,600 years, which would explain why stories about it appear in certain ancient periods, disappear, and then reappear again. And Sitchin's discoveries didn't stop there. He believed that legends of creative gods from different cultures, whether Greek or Egyptian, could actually be variations of the same story. Aliens interacting with humans at various points in history. Of course, mainstream academics criticize this idea, but it starts to make sense when you connect the dots. How else do you explain so many cultures, with no contact between them, sharing similar myths? Why do almost all ancient peoples talk about celestial beings coming down to Earth to teach, govern, and create? The genetic engineering described by the Sumerians raises even bigger questions. If the Anunnaki really created humans as a hybrid species, it means part of us isn't from this planet. That could explain why we're so different from other Earth species. Think about it. No other living creatures have developed technology, writing, or complex civilizations like we have. What makes us so unique? Maybe the answer is in our blood, or more specifically, the DNA we inherited from these star gods. It's interesting that modern science even finds traces that might point to this. When we look at human DNA, there are sequences with unknown origins and functions. We call them junk DNA. But maybe it's not just something we don't understand yet. Maybe it's the code that links us directly to the Anunnaki. At first, these ideas might sound wild, but they're based on texts that have survived thousands of years, through war, destruction, and censorship. The real question is, why would such ancient and specific writings exist if there wasn't some deeper truth behind them? It's possible the story about humanity's creation taught in religion and schools is just the surface, a simplified version hiding a much bigger truth that could threaten those in power. Now take a moment to think. If all of this is true, what does that mean for us as a species? What's our real purpose? We might not even fully understand our own origins. If you feel the same way, comment below with the word DNA, because this could be the key to understanding not only where we come from, but where we're headed. These mind-blowing revelations bring us to an important crossroads, a time when we need to look at ancient texts differently. They aren't just myths. They could be real historical records of encounters with beings from other worlds. And as we piece this puzzle together, the story gets more fascinating and the questions even deeper. Maybe these beings who created us are still around, watching what we've become. We'll keep exploring because there's so much more to uncover, and every detail challenges what you thought was true. When we read the Bible with an open mind and compare it to Sumerian records, an interesting connection emerges, as if we're decoding a hidden message in those ancient words. In Genesis, we find the famous line, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." Who is this us involved in creating mankind? Why doesn't it say, "I will make man in my image"? This small choice of words might be a big clue, something religious tradition has long seen as symbolic, but from another angle points to a group of beings shaping humanity's origin. Maybe it's the very same Anunnaki described by the Sumerians. Isn't it curious how different religions, born in different times and places, all talk about celestial beings coming down from the sky to interact with humans? In the Bible, the sons of God show up in Genesis 6, joining with mortal women to produce giants called the Nephilim. These powerful hybrids, part human, part superior being, mirror the Sumerian story of the Anunnaki creating a race half human, half divine. That similarity can't be ignored. It's like we're hearing the same story, retold in different words to fit each culture and era. The Old Testament is full of stories about angels or messengers coming down from heaven with power and authority. But maybe angel was just the word translators used for something people at the time couldn't describe. Beings with advanced technology, flying machines, and wisdom that seemed like magic. It's not hard to imagine that the chariots of fire described in texts like Ezekiel were actually reports of Anunnaki ships or technology. Ezekiel talks about wheels moving in all directions, bright lights, and sounds like a huge army marching. Was this just a spiritual vision? Or was it something physical he saw but couldn't explain? And if we look at other religions, the pattern repeats. In Hindu mythology, there are devas, celestial beings with divine powers, who also arrived in flying vehicles called vimanas. They fought battles in the skies, wielded powerful weapons, and were worshipped as gods. Doesn't that sound a lot like the Sumerian stories and the idea of the Anunnaki? Even in Greek mythology, the gods of Olympus interact with humans, producing hybrid heroes like Hercules, the son of Zeus and a mortal woman. Again, the story of superior beings coming down to shape humanity keeps showing up. In the New Testament, it's no different. Angels appear at key moments, delivering messages and guidance, often in a physical way, touching and interacting with people. The Star of Bethlehem, which led the Magi to Jesus' birth, is seen as a divine sign, but some suggest it might have been a real object in the sky, controlled by a higher intelligence. These ideas may sound bold, but they simply connect the dots, showing that it's not so crazy to think the Bible might be hiding accounts of extraterrestrial, or, as the ancients called them, divine encounters. The similarities between the sons of God and the Anunnaki go beyond just words. Both stories describe physical beings capable of having children with humans and sharing advanced knowledge. In the Book of Enoch, a text considered apocryphal and excluded from the official Bible, we read about the Watchers who came to Earth, taught forbidden secrets to humanity, and were punished for it. That story closely matches the Sumerian tales of Enki and Enlil, gods who disagreed on how humanity should be led. What's truly amazing is how these stories have survived across cultures and centuries, keeping a core that's hard to dismiss as coincidence. Just imagine how many stories have been lost over time, how many records erased, destroyed, or censored for revealing too much about who we really are. How many books were labeled forbidden and removed so only one story remains? If you felt like there are gaps in the official Bible account, you're not alone. Thousands of people around the world are asking the same questions. Which brings up the big question: did spiritual and political leaders throughout history know these truths and choose to keep them hidden? If we admit beings like the Anunnaki really influenced humanity, it would shake the foundations of organized religion. Maybe that's why this topic is so sensitive and why many call it forbidden. Yet here we are, looking at these connections and daring to question what few have dared to question. I want to hear what you think. Do you believe the sons of God in Genesis could be the same Anunnaki from the Sumerian texts? Or is this all just a bold interpretation? Type the word children below if you think there's something hidden between the Bible and the star gods. I want to see how many of you are truly waking up to these truths. And this is just the beginning, because the deeper we go, the more we realize the clues are everywhere, waiting for those brave enough to look beyond the veil. When we talk about evidence, about the possible presence of the Anunnaki in human history, we enter territory that's both fascinating and controversial. On one side, there's traditional archaeology, carefully trying to explain everything within accepted academic frameworks. On the other, there are thousands of artifacts, tablets, and discs that don't fit conventional stories and end up shelved or dismissed as mysteries solved. It's within these mysteries that we find strong evidence of something much bigger and hidden about our true origins. Among the most striking finds are clay tablets written in ancient Sumerian cuneiform. These records, over 5,000 years old, don't just describe daily life. They tell extraordinary stories of gods who came down from the sky, bringing knowledge. What's most amazing is how precisely they describe astronomical phenomena and even the structure of our solar system. For example, the Sumerians knew about planets like Uranus and Neptune, planets officially discovered by modern science thousands of years later. How could that be possible without advanced knowledge? Did they learn it from the Anunnaki, as their own records claim? Beyond the texts, a huge number of archaeological artifacts defy easy explanation. Excavations have uncovered Sumerian cylinder seals, showing the solar system with incredible accuracy, including planets unknown at the time. We also find figurines of humanoid beings with features that don't look natural, some wearing helmet-like gear or holding objects that look like advanced technology. All of this supports the idea that the Sumerians had contact with a much more advanced civilization, one capable of flight, building great structures, and passing on knowledge that changed human history. Conspiracy theorists argue many of these discoveries are ignored or actively discredited because if accepted, humanity would have to rewrite much of what we know. Think about that. If it were proven that beings from another world came to Earth and interacted with our ancestors, all our history books, religious stories, and even mainstream science would need to be rewritten. That kind of shakeup is hard for many to accept. They'd rather pretend the evidence isn't there. Evidence of advanced engineering also shows up in ancient structures that defy logic. Huge stones weighing hundreds of tons were cut and fitted with near-perfect precision at sites like ancient Babylon, the pyramids, and other monuments worldwide. Who could have pulled that off without modern tools? It's like lost technology, left behind by beings who knew way more than we can imagine, was at work. Another fascinating point is how similar symbols show up across cultures that had no contact with each other. The Sumerians, Egyptians, Maya, and even some African tribes all depict figures that look like astronauts in helmets and suits, remarkably like what we wear today. Is that just a coincidence? Or could it be proof that all these cultures were recording the same visitors from the stars? Official archaeology offers explanations, but they often feel stretched. A classic example is when figures that look like ships or aircraft get dismissed as purely religious symbols. Did all these separate peoples invent the same symbols on their own? Or were they leaving clues about something real they witnessed? Conspiracy theorists argue there's a global effort to keep this info secret because it threatens the powers that run the world. If humanity knew for sure that we're not alone in the universe and that our DNA might have been altered by beings from another planet, it would totally change how we see ourselves. And let's be honest, not everyone is ready for that kind of revelation. So here's my question. What would you do if you had solid proof that the Anunnaki were really here? Would you have the courage to share it with the world, even if it challenged everything we've been taught? If that idea speaks to you, type the word evidence in the comments. I want to know who's ready to look beyond the official history. Cuneiform inscriptions, mysterious artifacts, and ancient cultural stories are like pieces of a giant puzzle slowly coming together. The more we study these fragments, the more we realize there's a hidden story, buried deep in history. And that makes us wonder just how far the power of this knowledge reaches, and why there's so much effort to keep it from us. We're starting to understand the depth of this mystery. Every artifact, every clay tablet, every symbol carved in stone carries a message that's lasted thousands of years, calling us to wake up. If this makes sense to you, stick with me, because in the next part we'll go even deeper, revealing facts that will challenge how you see not just the past, but also the present and future of humanity. As we dig into the story of the Anunnaki, we see how much info has been hidden, silenced, or twisted over time. It's like an invisible force has worked to keep certain truths buried, truths that could completely change how we view human history. Why does this happen? Who benefits from keeping these secrets so well hidden? Looking back, it's clear knowledge has always been power. Those who control what people believe also control how they live, their choices, their fears, and their hopes. And if the Anunnaki really were here, leaving clues about our true origins, Revealing the truth could shake power structures built over centuries. One subtle example is how carefully certain texts were chosen for the Bible, and how others were left out. Entire books called apocryphal texts were removed, banned, or labeled unreliable. One famous example is the Book of Enoch, which tells about celestial beings called the Watchers who came to Earth and taught secrets to humanity. Knowledge never meant to be revealed. That sounds a lot like the stories about the Anunnaki, doesn't it? So why would such an ancient, important book be excluded from the official scriptures? Maybe because it revealed too much about these beings from the heavens and how they directly affected humankind. Even the translations of the Bible raise questions. Over centuries, versions have been changed, words altered, and meanings distorted. A small change in phrasing can turn a literal event into a spiritual metaphor. And this happens more often than we realize. Some scholars even say many words translated as angels might actually refer to real, physical beings, not just spiritual ones. The word heaven, for example, may have originally meant something like outer space, but over time it came to mean an unreachable divine realm. Also, religious and political powers have always wanted to keep a single story alive. Admitting that the gods of ancient times might have been aliens would undermine their authority. Think about it. If humanity was created, at least in part, by beings from other worlds, it would change how we see the divine, science, and even ourselves. How many stories were tailored to keep people under control? How many truths were altered so only a few had access to real knowledge? There are stories about archaeological finds that just disappeared or were kept secret. Objects, manuscripts, and artifacts that could prove advanced beings lived on Earth end up locked away in museum vaults or secret archives, never seen by the public. It's hard not to suspect a coordinated effort to keep all this hidden from curious minds. It's like there's an unspoken agreement among those in power. The general public isn't ready for the truth. Then again, maybe we're not ready either. Or maybe the truth could free us from a system built on control and fear. If we start treating the evidence about the Anunnaki as real, we have to admit that we're not just products of random chance, that maybe there's something much bigger inside us, a purpose that's been hidden for thousands of years. Imagine how many generations grew up believing an incomplete story, unaware that behind myths and religions lie records of encounters with beings from the sky. Beings who shaped us and might still be watching over us today. It's striking how nearly every major religion talks about battles between good and evil, angels and demons. What if these were really conflicts between different groups of celestial beings with opposing plans for humanity? That fits perfectly with the Sumerian stories of Enki and Enlil, two Anunnaki with very different ideas about our future. Enki wanted to protect and help humans, while Enlil saw humanity as a threat that needed to be controlled. These stories, which later became religious symbols and metaphors, might once have been far more literal than we think. The issue of censorship becomes even clearer when you see how modern science treats the origins of civilization. Discoveries that could support the Anunnaki idea are quickly dismissed as pseudoscience or conspiracy theories. But is that really about protecting knowledge, or just defending the official story? History is full of radical ideas once rejected that later turned out to be true. Maybe this is one of those cases. Have you ever wondered why so many myths about gods, angels, and sky beings are so similar across cultures with no contact? How could distant peoples invent such alike stories? That can't just be coincidence. Maybe these stories were passed down to preserve the memory of something real, something that actually happened. And I want to hear what you think. Is there a deliberate effort to hide the truth about the Anunnaki? Do you believe religious and political institutions are keeping information from us that could change everything we know about life and creation? If you do, type the word hidden in the comments. I want to see how many of you are awake and ready to question everything you've been told. Hold on to that thought, because we're about to dive even deeper into this mystery, exploring details that will challenge not just history as we know it, but everything we believe and who we really are. We'll start to see human history as part of something much bigger, a carefully planned project that gives the Anunnaki story a whole new meaning. These aren't just theories about aliens or strange archaeology, but a deep reflection on who we are and why we exist. Was our existence planned for a higher purpose, or are we just the product of random chance? Maybe advanced civilizations shaped us in their image. These questions resonate because we all sense something beyond the physical world. For the Sumerians, human creation wasn't random. They described the Anunnaki as life's architects, beings with such incredible knowledge that they created a hybrid race by mixing earthly genetics with something otherworldly. That makes us wonder, is there a divine spark inside us, part of the essence these sky gods gave us? If so, how does that change how we understand the soul, spirit, and life's meaning? Modern science looks at evolution, biology, and genetics, but still can't fully explain our complex consciousness, why we love, create art, wonder about the universe, or feel connected to something greater. These questions go beyond physical matter. They touch something deep inside us. Many believe that when the Anunnaki shaped or modified us, they also planted a spiritual blueprint, a spark linking us to the cosmos, reminding us we're not just earthbound. When we study sacred texts, we find promises of something bigger, a spiritual mission each of us carries. What if the gods in those ancient stories, the same ones we call the Anunnaki, knew all along that humans would be more than just workers for their purposes? Maybe they left clues to our true nature, our ability to awaken and evolve, not just as bodies but as consciousness, invites us to see life differently. While science views us as biological organisms shaped by millions of years of evolution, spirituality suggests our existence has a deeper purpose, to learn, grow, and maybe reconnect with our creators. This tension between science and spirituality stirs a deep mystery in all of us. How many times have you asked, why am I here? What's my real purpose? These questions take on new meaning if we think of the Anunnaki as architects of our fate. Imagine every human carries a hidden code beyond DNA, a spiritual code linking us to our origin. Maybe our true potential is sleeping inside us, waiting to wake up. And maybe part of that awakening starts when we question what we've been told, opening our eyes to truths hidden for thousands of years. Some say the Anunnaki didn't just create our bodies. They gave us a hunger for something bigger, a thirst for spiritual answers. If you feel that pull, that urge to look up and ask, who am I? It could be the strongest sign of a grand plan at work. Isn't it amazing that every ancient culture connects to the divine, the heavens, something beyond this world? Maybe those echoes remind us we're more than flesh and bones. We're part of something greater. While some see the Anunnaki just as aliens, others view them as messengers of a grand spiritual design, sent to guide human evolution both physically and spiritually. This suggests that humanity's story is really one of awakening, of reconnecting with something deep inside us that's always been calling us home. Of course, this idea clashes with what we've been taught since we were kids. We've been told we're just the product of random chance, a species evolving without any real purpose or direction. But when we look closely at ancient records and clues left by past civilizations, that story doesn't quite add up. There are gaps and mysteries science still can't explain, and it's in those gaps where science and spirituality meet. If you believe there's something greater, something beyond what we currently understand, type the word purpose below. I want to see who's ready to think outside the box and consider that our existence might be part of a hidden, grand design. Do you feel connected to something unseen? This exploration of spirituality and the Anunnaki is just the beginning. There's so much more to uncover about how this perspective can completely change what we believe about our origins and our future. Stay tuned, because next we'll dive even deeper. You'll see how every detail of this story points to an even bigger revelation, one that could totally reshape how you see life and yourself. If the Anunnaki really were our creators, everything we accept as absolute truth would need to be rethought. Human history as we know it wouldn't be just a simple line of chance and natural selection, but a rich, complex story featuring direct intervention from beings with technology and knowledge far beyond ours. Such a shift wouldn't just change science, it would shake faith too. It suggests that the divine, the sacred, and the cosmic are woven into our very being more closely than we ever imagined. Think about this. What if every miracle or act of God recorded throughout history was actually advanced technology or intervention by beings our ancestors just called gods? Science, which has long tried to explain life's origins through natural processes, would have to accept that we're not alone, and that evolution itself might have been guided by outside forces with purposes we don't yet understand. Realizing that our creation might have been part of a grand experiment demands a total rethink of biology, genetics, and anthropology. How else can we explain the sudden burst of consciousness and creativity that turned us from simple hunters and gatherers into builders of civilizations almost overnight? The Anunnaki idea offers answers that, though controversial, seem to fill those gaps. And what about faith? Many would be shocked to think the gods they worshipped for millennia might actually be cosmic beings. But this revelation doesn't have to weaken spirituality. In fact, it could make it stronger. After all, who's to say these beings aren't instruments of an even greater divine force? Messengers or architects chosen to shape life across the universe. The idea of divinity can grow, not collapse. When we understand that creating life involves multiple levels of intelligence and energy, imagine history rewritten under the undeniable truth that we were created, or perfected, by a race of star beings. Museums would change their exhibits. Textbooks would be rewritten. Our personal beliefs would be challenged. Ancient civilizations once called primitive would be seen as direct witnesses to something extraordinary, not just mythmakers. We could no longer ignore the legends carved in stone, clay tablets, and sacred texts worldwide. But maybe the biggest change would happen inside us. Knowing we carry the mark of our creators in our DNA might inspire us to live with more reverence and responsibility. If we were designed, then we have a purpose, a reason beyond random chance. Maybe our biggest challenges, deepest longings, and even our ability to love and connect are all part of this legacy left by the Anunnaki. Now stop and think. If this revelation came out today, would you be ready to accept it? Would you have the courage to rethink your life and realize that maybe half of what you've been taught isn't quite what it seems? This isn't just an intellectual exercise. It touches our very core, shaping how we see the world, how we relate to each other, and how we understand humanity's place in the universe. So here's the question. Do you believe we were created by gods or by something even greater? Type creators in the comments. This conversation isn't just about history or religion. It's about identity, who we really are. Can you imagine living in a world where everyone accepts one another? Where religions aren't barriers but bridges connecting humanity to the cosmos? Where science embraces spirituality and spirituality welcomes science? It would be a moment of collective awakening, recognizing the universe as a vast lab for learning and growth. That kind of reflection might feel heavy to some, but it's necessary. Questioning isn't a lack of faith. It's the path to a deeper, more authentic faith. When we re-examine ancient texts, archaeological finds, and ideas that challenge the official stories, we give ourselves a chance to see beyond the shadows meant to keep us in the dark. Think about this. What if the truth that we were created or altered by star beings is already inside us, waiting to be awakened? Maybe that feeling that makes you look up at the sky and wonder is a sign that deep down, we know we've never been alone. If that resonates with you, type the word truth in the comments. I want to see who's really ready to join me on this journey, opening our eyes and searching for answers beyond what the conventional world tells us. Get ready, because there's a lot more to uncover, and what's coming next will challenge everything you think you know. If you've made it this far, congrats. You're part of a rare group with the courage to dive into such a controversial and eye-opening topic. That shows you're after the truth and not afraid to question everything you've been taught. Now tell me, who stuck with me till the end? Drop a comment that says, "I want the hidden truth," because that tells me you're part of the select few who refuse to live just on the surface. If this video made you think, sparked new questions, or opened your mind to a fresh perspective on our origins, leave a comment like that right now. It helps the channel grow and brings this message to others who are searching for answers. And of course, if you haven't subscribed yet, take a moment to subscribe and hit the bell, because in upcoming videos, we'll keep going with even deeper revelations. Don't leave without watching the next video on your screen. I promise it'll surprise you even more and connect all the dots we've talked about today. Let's discover together what no one else has dared to reveal.